Today, more and more children are finding it extremely difficult to focus, and it's having a real impact on things like their behavior, their ability to learn, and even the simplest tasks like sitting down and staying at the table for a meal. Unfortunately, the way we live in modern society is a big contributor to this. Things in our homes and in our children's environment and the way we do things today are actually hindering their ability to focus. So the first step, if you want to improve your child's attention span, is to remove the things that are actually harmful to it. Some of these are so damaging that they're actually changing the structure of your child's brain. And no, I'm not just talking about screen time here. In fact, the first one is the fight, flight, or freeze response. The brain switch you didn't know was on this is when the amygdala, a part of our brain, becomes activated and tells our body, hey, you need to start paying attention because there is something seriously wrong here. Now, when this is triggered, it absolutely destroys your ability to focus. And that's because when the amygdala is active, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's responsible for thinking and focus, switches off. It's being completely overridden by this fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, here's the weird thing. You probably think my child is never in that state. They're not scared or in danger. But the amygdala doesn't need a real threat to trigger it. Unpredictability is enough. When your child's day is constantly changing without warning, their brain triggers that fight, flight, or freeze response. And as a result, they're constantly on alert, scanning the environment to see where that next threat is coming from. Routine breaks this cycle. A simple daily shield for the brain. Knowing exactly what's going to happen in the day tells your child's brain that the environment is safe. And when they feel safe, the amygdala quietens down and the prefrontal cortex comes back online. And this allows them to focus and come back to the present moment. This is why it is so important to have a predictable routine for your child. Now, when I say predictable routine, I don't mean that you have to have your day planned to the minute. With children, we both know that that never happens. You just want to aim for a similar routine that you follow every day. Things will go wrong. That's a given. You just adjust when they do happen. And then, once you get past that, you slot back into the routine. For example, in our house, our morning routine looks like this. Our kids wake up at 6:45 and the first thing they do is have breakfast. Then they brush their teeth. Now, only after they've done those two things that are a high risk of dirtying their clothes do they get to rest. And assuming everything goes to plan, and by that I mean that my son or my 3-year-old haven't actually dirtied their clothes again and we've had to change their clothes, we get into the car and we do school drop-off. We even keep the same order every morning. So we drop our older kids off first, and then we drop our youngest daughter at childcare. Now, your routine doesn't have to look the same as ours. The key here is to create a routine and add a bit more structure to your child's day, as that's going to help keep that amygdala calm and quiet and improve your child's ability to focus throughout the day. Now, this next one is extremely important to get under control the hidden thief of brain volume, because a recent study has just showed that if you don't, it can actually lead to reduced gray matter in the parts of the brain linked to attention, memory, and impulse control. You've probably noticed that after a bad night's sleep, you're irritable and you can't concentrate, and even the tiniest things set you off. This is because the prefrontal cortex is extremely dependent on sleep to function well. And as you know, it's the part of the brain responsible for attention, impulse control, and planning. So naturally, when you don't get enough sleep, it impairs your ability to do those things. And your child is the same. When they're exhausted, they just cannot focus. This is where the research by Gruber and colleagues is really interesting, because they found that the children who are sleep deprived, and by that I mean they were only getting 40 minutes less sleep than usual, actually presented with symptoms that looked almost identical to ADHD. But when their sleep issues were addressed and they started to get more sleep, those ADHD-like symptoms went away. Now, unfortunately, it goes even further than that. As I alluded to earlier, chronic sleep deprivation can actually result in changes to your child's brain structure. These changes impact their ability to focus and learn in the future. A study which demonstrated this was completed in 2022 by Jung Wang and colleagues, and they analyzed the brain scans of over 8,300 children aged between 9 and 10. And they compared the MRI scans of those children who were getting less than 9 hours sleep to those who were getting more than 9 hours sleep. And what they found was that the children who were having less than 9 hours of sleep actually had smaller gray matter volume in the areas of the brain linked to attention, memory, and impulse control. And those differences were still there 2 years later. So it's clear that sleep is incredibly important for young children. As a general guide, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine identifying the silent signs of exhaustion recommend children aged 1 to 2 get 11 to 14 hours of sleep. Children aged 3 to 5 get 10 to 13 hours of sleep in 24 hours, and children aged 6 to 12 get 9 to 12 hours of sleep. Now, something to note here is that deviating 2 hours more or 2 hours less than these recommendations is also considered within the normal range for some kids. So the real indicator that your child is getting enough sleep is that they wake up fairly easily in the morning and function well during the day. If your child is hard to wake, very grumpy or sleepy in the morning, it can be a sign that they need more sleep. And you might just need to adjust their bedtime to be slightly earlier to ensure that they can actually get the sleep that they need. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. The truth about digital brain architecture. You've probably been waiting for me to get to this one, and it's screen time. So what are the realities around this? Well, here's what we know. We've got clear data now that shows excessive screen time can physically change the architecture of a developing brain. And it's not in a good way. A study led by Dr. John Hutton used MRIs to scan the brains of children aged 3 to 5, and what they found was pretty scary. The children with higher screen use had less mature white matter organization in the areas of the brain associated with attention, language, memory, and the ability to understand and process emotions. Now, what I find most scary about all of this is that those first 5 years are when your child's brain is developing most rapidly, and those early years form the foundation of everything.